Welcome back into Exit 99 Sports. As always, my name is Caleb Deloach, and today we are live from the old gym here at Jackson High School for Media Day. You guys are getting pictures taken, all that fun stuff, getting ready to start the season. I'm joined by Coach Ryan Nesbitt. Coach, thanks for having me here today.
Thanks for having me on. Appreciate it.
Yeah, Coach, we are, like I said, at time of recording, a couple weeks out from the week one. By the time this airs, it'll be about a week. Are you guys ready, fired up, getting ready to start things here?
Yeah, guys are working hard, off to a good start, so enjoying the process.
Yeah, you guys, I'm sure, have had a busy, start to official practice, things like that. You and me in here, the old gym. For those that don't know, no air conditioning. How's the heat been treating you guys? You've been working around that in the morning, stuff like that.
Yeah, been fortunate to be able to go in the AM, which has been a huge deal for our kids because if there's a handful of days that even at 7 p.m., your feels like temperature with the humidity was still hovering around 100. So we've been morning practices, still been thick, but very doable, and our kids have done a great job of managing it and giving great effort.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, obviously it goes without saying for anybody that's been around your program, knows your program, but it's, you guys are very, very locked in. One of the premier groups in the state. Where's the kind of focus at? Is it a thing where you guys have been locked in, or does it feel different as we inch toward the season?
Every group's different. That's been a steady, consistent conversation we've had with these kids this off season. It's not last year's group. There's been some moments where we've had to remember and remind how hard it is to have success at any level, in any sport, any activity. Winning is hard. It requires a certain level of effort and intentionality, growth, and process. And we've had some good, we've had some bad, but by and large, more good than bad. So we're rolling along.
Yeah, it's always good. Always good to have more good than bad.
Sure.
You mentioned it. Last season, you guys had a very, very special year. However you want to quantify it, but your most wins as far as wins-losses go, farthest you've gotten in the postseason here at Jackson. I think your second time personally as a head coach in the semifinals in Class 6. So, a great year, undefeated regular season, all those things. You dominated your conference, district. I'm sure a lot of people watching were at and saw, the big home win. You knocked off CBC before eventually losing on the road at Lee's Summit. A phenomenal year, pretty much by any measure of it, I'm sure, for you guys.
Yeah, we talked about it a lot at the time, and it's still held true. The wins are fantastic, but it was just a group of kids that legitimately enjoyed each and every single day, and the joy was in the process, the joy was in the work, and the results were a byproduct of that. And so, it's one of those years, and I've had a couple now, but. A special group of kids, and then just had that secret sauce about them. So,
yeah,
certainly enjoyed it. Enjoyed every single one of those memories, and getting ready to shift gears into a new one.
Yeah, I do want to talk about memories. How do you process that when it comes to ending a season and maybe ending it in a frustrating way or some capacity, ending it a loss? You're always probably going to end in a loss almost any year, but how do you kind of, like you said, put that behind you and then move on and kind of build off of that?
Yeah. One, just perspective. We live in a day and age where what the world would quantify as success might not necessarily be, what we quantify success as. And so far more important and the bigger game that we're playing in the sport of football, and really any extracurricular that a kid's involved in, is we're in the business of growing people. And our sport, our activity, we're here to enhance the educational experience for each student. And, I'm really proud of the group of kids that we had. Through the process, there was good, there's bad, there's lessons to be learned in good times, there's lessons to be learned in bad and hard times. And I think our kids, through the season, everything that goes into it, off season, same with this group coming in, it's who they become as men that is far more important than what happens on on a scoreboard. That stuff's going to fade. You know, I've tell them often, you know, I've got 2 state championship rings that collect dust. Nobody cares if you really want to know the truth. But again, who we become as people through this process, that's the prize.
Yeah. Yeah, and, you know, you mentioned that you had a really special group this last year that was made up of a really, really talented group of seniors, a lot of good kids who, you know, I've got to see play a lot of different sports. And, you know, anytime you lose a couple guys, that's going to be talked about. Your starting quarterback, a guy, Drew Parsons, who said he had 27 starts in a little over 2 years for you, signed to play baseball at SEMO. You've got a left tackle who's, you know, playing football right now at Mizzou, who was, I mean, to be honest, he graduated as one of the best athletes ever at the school, finishing top 3 in track and wrestling. Like, unreal. Yeah, unreal. Like, a very strong group of seniors, a lot of guys contributing throughout O-line on the defensive side. You know, the trio of linebackers, Boyd Langford, Dawson Bortner, Brett Finley, a lot of guys who part of the rotation. Well, first, you know, you can reflect on those guys. Those were a great group of kids you're going to be moving on from.
Yeah. It's a top to bottom senior class that we knew going to miss, you know, whether you're talking athletically and talent-wise, to even guys that might have had a lesser role from a football standpoint, but no less valuable and no smaller of an impact in the locker room. You know, they were a group of guys that, as a coach, you can rely on. If something needed to be swept, they were the ones that could hold kids accountable and making sure that things operated in the way that we need to operate to have the success that we're accustomed to having. And so great leaders, great kids, obviously going to miss a lot of them both on and off the field. But, you know, that's the nature of the business. And you know, you always wonder year after year. It's, you know, you joke how you go replace Gavin Gilliams after year 1, and then Tyson Ford comes along, and then how you go replace Tyson Ford, and then Aiden Sander comes along.
Exactly.
This is just, you know, that's coaching. It's the business.
Yeah, and, you know, moving to this year, kind of turning that page, you guys, I mean, once again, I mean, across the board, you know, expectations are high. You have talented players, things like that. You guys also, I would say, really have challenged yourself on the schedule front once again this year. You know, as we're heading into this final week or so of prep, you guys start the year with Edwardsville. You guys have a lot of heavy hitters once again here on the schedule. Yeah,
non-conference schedule is certainly a challenge. You know, not being a certain way by any means, but becoming more and more difficult in finding games and opponents in the non-conference. Especially a little tricky this time around with having the conference being broke up, you know, with a week 3 conference game and then week 5 through 7. So, you know, we filled it with some really quality opponents. Kids are going to get an opportunity to play a variety of different types of teams and skill sets. And so we're excited about that, excited about the competition, excited for the opportunity to grow as a football team and program.
One question on that, you guys do have 2 long road trips, one over to Louisville, Kentucky, was at Labor Day weekend, and then later in the season, week 8, you go up to Hannibal, which is a little bit of a trek as well.
Yep.
How, what do you, obviously you're not probably there yet, not thinking about this yet, but what's like the schedule, like travel kind of look like when you do those 3, 4, 5 hour trips like that?
Yeah. Ballard will be a little bit, you know, more of like a similar experience that we had with postseason. We're going traveling over to Lee Summit. We're going to leave. We'll travel up Friday, day of. We'll leave early. You know, we don't want to ride all day and then get off the bus and try and go play. But we'll get a walk through somewhere on the way. We're going to plan on staying Friday night there and wake up and traveling, so we're not driving at 3 or 4 in the morning. And then Hannibal will be more of a down and back, you know, road warrior scenario.
Yeah.
But we'll be okay.
Yeah, for sure. And then you mentioned it, like this out-of-conference group, I mean, you end with a Cardinal Ritter that's chock full of D1 kids. You've added St. Mary's Southside this year. They, for those that, you know, aren't aware, you've got a couple of special kids there. One committed to now Mizzou, got a running back there that's very talented, a couple more kids with SEC offers. You guys are going to face some big-time next-level talent this year.
Yep, no question. You know, you go look at it, Edwardsville is historically incredibly talented program over there, and Illinois, largest classification, going to be over 3,000 students, so they got a ton of kids to choose from.
Right.
Really well coached. Pickering does a great job over there, and he's a good man and defensive-minded ball coach, and his teams mimic that. They're tough, aggressive, and well coached. And Ballard athletic group, we didn't know much about them last year, and it was kind of a matchup that we'd had the 1-year deal playing Cahokia at East St. Louis, and Kentucky, Tennessee are on different cycles than Missouri and Illinois. So it was kind of an opportunity to get an out-of-state opponent and somebody that was unfamiliar, and their athletic group, St. Mary's, as I mentioned, is going to have some very top-end talent. A lot of kids that run around, run well, and will have to play well. And then you got Hannibal, who's a tremendous program, physical.
They went to they beat St. Mary's, and they went to the final, or they went to the championship in Class 4.
They played in the state championship game in Class 4, and then you got Cardinal Ritter, who's a Final Four in Class 5, and just a physical football team, and incredibly well coached. And Coach Spain does a great job there, and so we'll certainly have our hands full several times.
Yeah, it's exciting. You got all these very talented out-of-conference games. You have in-conference games. There's no major. There's not many coaching changes at the top in any of the conference schools. Has there? Nothing.
Nope.
Nothing out there. There. Okay. And then that is a difference. I don't know. Is that a conscientious choice or just something that happens for some reason that you do have? I think it's Sykeston, and then you play St. Mary's and get back in conference.
Yeah, it's a schedule rotation within the league. You got an odd number of teams, and so it just as a rotation on when you're playing conference games, and just happened to fall on that calendar year.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, that was unusual. I saw that. It was interesting scheduling quirk. So, and then, getting into this season, like you said, you guys, you lose a special group of kids. You lose a leader of the offense, quarterback. You lose a left tackle, but you're far from the cupboard being empty here. You guys have a lot of special kids, a lot of kids back that got a lot of playing time last year at the varsity level. Running through that, we can start at that quarterback position, and who's going to be taking the place of Drew, a kid who kind of got thrown in the fire early and then eventually developed into one of, if not the very best quarterbacks in the state.
Yeah. So we'll have junior Tyler Fischer be stepping in, and he's a kid that he's dreamt of playing this position since he's probably old enough to remember, and he's worked incredibly hard at it since a young age, in all the development phases, from the IQ of the game to mechanical to physically developing in the weight room, and he's a great kid, fun to coach, incredibly talented, but like any quarterback, it's going to take experience. It's going to take reps. There's going to be feast and there's going to be famine. And we'll talk more about the offense as a unit, but the good thing is with the cast around him, he doesn't have to. It's not dependent on his ability. He's got to play his part, and he does have the most difficult job in football, but nonetheless, he's got a great supporting cast of guys around him, and he just has to do his job, and he will. But there'll be growing pains of making decisions when it's not there, and really that's the biggest growth for him and any quarterback. Drew, through his first 6 games as a junior, was sitting at 58% completion, 6 touchdowns, 7 picks, had turned the ball over, through turnover with fumbles as well. And then as the game slowed down, and there's a point for all players where it just slows down, and that happened for him. And he finished his junior year right at 72% completion, 15 touchdowns, 1 pick.
Unreal.
And then he goes into his senior year and obviously statistically does what he does. So, Tyler, we'll see what his future holds. I know he's going to work at it, and I have great pride. He's very, very talented. But like I said, there'll be good things that occur, and we've prepped him. He might even throw it to the wrong team on the occasion.
What?
So
they can do that?
We'll work around it, and he's a great kid and a fun one to coach.
Yeah, you talked about great athlete. This is a kid who stepped in last year and played corner for you at a really high level, and he had to go immediately, thrown in the fire against some studs, especially week one, you started with the Cardinal Ritter. He was out there. He was competing at a very high level on the defensive side.
Yeah. No, he was an all-conference defensive player. Truly was one of our best athletes on the football team last year, and he just it required him to be on the field somewhere, and corner ended up being the biggest need and fit for him, and he did a great job. Had some big interceptions, and it's truly like graduating a starter over there on the defensive side as we replace him, because much to our defensive coach's dismay, he'll not be playing any defensive.
Darn.
So.
Yeah, you mentioned he's not alone in this offense, especially being joined in the backfield. You guys bring back I don't know how people are ranked and things like that, where people will fall and when it gets votes and all-state and conference, things like that. But, for my money, this is one of, if not the very best running back groups in the entire state, and 3 guys that got a lot of varsity experience a year ago, and led by a rarity here at Jackson, anywhere else, a 4-year starter, Jalen Hampton.
Yeah. No, our running back room, we're blessed. Truly, I don't know if he'll have a better top to bottom running back room at the high school level. You've got Jalen, who's earned his. Literally, he's earned his and his touches and what he commands, and he's grown, and he finds ways to still continue to get better. And that's what I love about him, is he's not complacent. Relying on previous success. And he's continuing to grow his skill set as a receiver and other things. So, but 3,000-yard rusher returning, over 4,300 yards all-purpose, 70-plus touchdowns.
It's a good start.
It is. He's a great player. From a college standpoint, it's only going to take one for him, and he's gotten some opportunities, and so he's got to translate well. He's a great football player. He might be not the measurables that some folks are looking for, but great football is great football, and that's what he is. He's a good football player.
And you mentioned, he was a kid that, especially this last season, it felt like there was a noticeable jump he took. Just even you mentioned the receiving threat out of the backfield was humongous. He was a problem coming out in the flats and running wheel routes, things like that for you guys. But also, it felt like he moved differently last year. Like, he just exploded as soon as the ball touched his hands. The way he moved laterally even felt like it improved. He felt like even a different kid from sophomore to junior year.
Yeah. I think we talked about this time last year. When you play as a freshman, you're just excited. You just want to play. And you're here in the student section, he's a freshman, and all those chants. And, you got to be a pretty disciplined young kid at 14, 15 years old to not let that get to you. And it didn't. Like, he did a good job. But you'd be hard-pressed to not sit back and go, I am pretty good. And sophomore year, to his mind, wasn't what he wanted. He ran for 1,000 yards as a sophomore in high school. So
not bad.
It's not bad.
Not bad.
But for him, his goals, his opinion, and his personal desires on who he sees himself as, he just went about the business working incredibly hard. And he was hungry, and he had certainly was rewarded for those efforts. And I think, he's continued that trend, and now he's a little bit more, I hate to use the term professional because we're talking about high school kids, but he's a pro in how he goes about his business of training and running, and he's consistently available. He's the same kid day in, day out, and what a joy that is for coaching, having those type of kids. Yeah.
And then what's going on behind him? So you had Memphis Maddox this past season. Talk about a number 2 back of incredible talent, a home run hitter. He was great in track as well.
Yeah.
And then also I saw, Gage Parker at the end of some games. Not a fun person to face after you've gone 4 quarters of Jalen Hampton and Drew Parsons and company last year.
Memphis was one that was kind of a tough draw for him because he was playing enough that didn't warrant him playing Mondays or even second half duty. Couldn't risk losing him in those types of moments, and so he was limited action. He's obviously got a great skill set in his home run ability and burst to go along with his physicality. He's got great natural instincts. You just can't teach it as a back, and really all 3 of them do from that standpoint. But he's excellent in pass protection, growing as a receiver. But he's obviously going to play full-time defensively, but he'll carry the football and rotate. And then Gage Parker, as you mentioned, who really took most of the carries in the second half of a lot of games.
Yep.
He finished just shy of 700 yards rushing and 10 touchdowns in varsity action. And he is a change of pace to both of them. And he is a throwback downhill. He runs angry. He's allergic to the ground. There's a million one things that you can say about him.
Yeah,
he's fun to watch. He's got tremendous body balance and control to go along with a fun temperament. I mean, he's a physical, enjoys that aspect of the game. And so all three of them bring certain the skill set to the position, and we'll utilize all of them. There'll be times you see all three of them on the field in certain groupings, and times we're just rotating and keeping fresh legs. So fortunate and blessed.
Yeah, you have, like you said, incredible three-headed monster there. Is there any other names there, maybe even at a lower level, things like that, you expect to get good reps this year, get some other running backs in the program?
At JV level, Micah Beard and Grant Sander are guys that are coming along, shifty, quick backs, and then the incoming freshman group has some backs that we're pretty excited about. So, you've got, it's part of building a program.
Right.
Life will still exist after Jalen, but we're going to certainly enjoy having him while we got him, and be on to the next crop of kids and new names.
Yeah, and then you continuing to build around, like you said, a first-year starting quarterback. Also helps when you have a lot of really, really talented receivers coming back as well, and you guys are blessed in that area also. I mean, a Jory Toma was all-state, a Blaine Reagan, who is one of the fastest kids in the state of Missouri, a phenomenal two-way athlete. And Evan Turley, a kid who's been playing for you now, this will be his fourth year. You're just always open, great hands.
Yep.
You have three receivers that have got a ton of varsity experience.
Yep. Bring back your starting tight end. You bring back three receivers. We do lose Brock Meyer, and he was a huge frame, and then just a consistent leadership presence. That other guys have had to learn how to pick that up. And what you missed there, but. You do bring back those pieces, so Jory, unbelievably athletic. We joke with him because you wouldn't think it when you look at him, and we like to tell him that.
And he's a guy who went from he's made a couple plays here and there a couple seasons ago to last year, just being all state, just mossing people, running by people, everything.
It's the fun part of coaching. You going into last year, you think he can do it. You're hopeful. Obviously, that would make life easier if he's the guy, and boy, he was. And he was ready. And that's just part of the development process of program. It's having the next guys in, and it's the same conversation how you replace a Kai Crow, and then here comes a guy like Jory, and we've got the next crew behind these guys, and so. Jory's going to be consistent. He's a big frame, runs well, high points the ball incredibly well, great on back shoulder, understands separation, winning with leverage, and those types of things. Blaine, a home run hitter, can just get up top. I mean, you got a 500-meter kid and a quarterback with a bit.
That'll help a little bit.
It will. Those guys, have a tendency to make me look smarter than I am. And then you got Evan, who's high IQ, tremendous student of the game. Really works to understand the position in the slot, and then you've got Danton Johnson, sophomore to be, who's had a great camp. I mean, just a great camp. He's a two-way player as a sophomore, but he's commanding his time and touches, and he can throw it a little bit, so there might even be a little wild DJ package that, we wrinkle in there and have some fun with, but and then off of that, Lawson Tyser, sophomore to be, like a Turley 2.0, just a really good player. Kyler Heath as an incoming freshman, another Blaine type kid who's already running 9.6, 9.7, and a 10 fly. So a kid who really, really run. And then you got, Aspen Patterson and Blake Millant, and some length in the receiver room. So young guys are coming, but you certainly got a lot of return in there. So excited.
And you mentioned Grant Brown back at tight end as well. Anybody else going to be working in that room? Because you guys, you've shown the ability to be really multiple offensively, play a couple tight ends, things like that.
We'll deploy several different personnel groupings. We can get big, and we can shrink and get small and get the speed out there. And so we do. We'll utilize the kids that we have and build your offense around what you can do, what you do well. And that's what the fun part about fall camp and summer is. figuring out who you are and your identity and those types of things. But at the tight end position, you got Grant Brown, 3-year starter at tight end, and obviously really understands it from a blocking standpoint on what's needed at the position, and then continues to grow in what he can do from a skill set. He's a good athlete, great baseball player, and so we'll be able to use him. You've got junior to be Sam Crowley, who's had a great offseason, continues to get bigger and stronger. He's a really good athlete, got good hands, big frame. And then you've got an incoming freshman, Mekhi Carruthers, who's an incredibly impressive physical stature as a young man, can run, jump. Still the game's moving fast, as you can imagine, particularly practicing against the guys we have on defense and D-line.
Yeah, it's quite a jump going from 8th grade football to seeing those guys.
No question, but he loves the game and is a sponge, and he's soaking it up. And, it's certainly gotten him out of his comfort zone. He's never been not the biggest guy out there, and so this is forcing him to grow, forcing him to become a better version of him. So excited to see his progression.
For sure. And then, where it all starts in the trenches, offensive line. We mentioned it. You do lose a couple guys up front, but probably, maybe the person who makes the most headlines returning on your team is Braden Harris up there. He played right tackle. I assume he's going to slide over to the left side this year.
Yep, he is. Obviously, like you mentioned, folks know who he is, and Braden's obviously a really good player, but his growth as a man, as a leader, as a kid, is off the field has been what I've enjoyed the most. He's a big personality, and he's a fun one to have on your roster. So love coaching the kiddo, and he's sliding over to left tackle. We're not a finished product. We're still evaluating the offensive line. We've got some guys that we know that can play. It's just getting them on the bus in the right seats, as Coach Saban would say. So if we were starting a ball game today, we'd go Jace Winston, senior at left guard. We'd go Brody Swain, junior center. We would go Gavin Shin, returner starter at guard, and Colton Abercrombie would kick out to right tackle. You've got Ryan Smith, Colby Schonoff, that are our guys that are vying for opportunities. And then you got up-and-comers and Aiden Marshall and George Beekline that are really good young players. So competition is strong at the offensive line as well.
Yeah, and that's, you never want to even have to think about it, but that's a position where, injuries happen, an ankle here, there, knee, somebody gets rolled up on. And it's good to have that depth that you guys have, and happened, last year you had guys jump in and never lost quality, it felt like.
Yep. Part of that personnel grouping, stuff is down the stretch. We started working some 6 O-linemen packages on the field, and so Jace Winston got a lot of repetitions, got a lot of reps in big ball games. So he feels more like a returning starter than somebody that's starting for the first time. So that's a meaningful experience for him, and it'll be the same way with those other guys on however it shakes out. We'll use these guys, and they'll play significant roles.
For sure. Now flipping over to the defensive side, once again, we talked about it a lot. There's a lot of positions you bring quite a bit back. Defensive line is also one of those places. A couple guys who made a lot of plays. So Keegan in here, he's looking even, bigger than he did last year. He's a big frame that put up a ton of numbers off the edge for you guys. Cameron Caldwell, another guy who just showed up in big moments. You guys have had a lot of playmakers on that side. Who else is going to be maybe working in along that defensive line?
Yeah, it's a group that we're really excited about. 2 years ago, they were sophomore starters on a defense that struggled a little bit identity as we shifted from to an even front, and failed experiment by Coach Nesbitt and getting back to what had worked for us. And those guys had taken their lumps a little bit, and then started to see some success last year, and continued to get after it in the weight room, and have really blossomed. But technically are playing the defensive line position at a high level through camp. They've been tough to block, and so there's also times that you wonder if I'm watching bad football or if both sides are good. So we'll find out shortly. But our defensive line, you touched on Keegan Brueggemann, length, size, consistency. You can depend on him. He's going to be there daily. He's a tremendous leadership presence. I was listening to him in a defensive line meeting the other day, and just his ability to teach young guys is not common for high school kids. So he's a fun one to have. You got Cameron Caldwell, who might be one of the better defensive linemen in our state. Had a bunch of postseason accolades last year, but he's gotten bigger, stronger, certainly getting some college opportunities, and he's been a menace inside. And then you got Aiden Jones, who has been one of those kids. Both him and Cameron are great lessons for young people. Both those guys were afterthoughts or not even in the junior high thought process, non-players, and they fell in love with this thing called eating and the weight room, and they look totally different. I mean, I think Cameron was 170, 180-pound incoming freshman that's now a 245, 250-pound interior defensive lineman. That's power cleaning over 300, benching over 300, squatting in the mid-fours. I mean, he's an absolute unit, and just a great kid, a great person. And Aiden's another one of those stories. And then you've got other seniors, Sean Watson, Caden Chavez sliding over to defensive line, Gavin Shin returning and playing on the defensive line, and then Ryan Smith, using him a little bit in a lesser role offensively to really free him up to be able to be a dual-way guy, and at 6'5".
That's a good frame right there as well. That kid.
6'4", 6'5", 240 pounds, long, lean, very aggressive. So defensive line is quality, and it all starts and stops up there, and we're excited about him.
Yeah, and then the one position where it felt like you probably lose the most on the defensive side is that linebacker room. You had Boyd Langford, who was a multi-year player for you that got dinged up early in the year. You had a guy, then Dawson Bordner stepped in, felt like didn't lose a beat, maybe even added to the group. You have Finley coming off the edge, is also graduated. So you have some spots there for guys that really step up.
Yeah, starting with returning, got Joe Moore, who is about as steady as you're going to have. I've joked with a couple college coaches about what you're going to get is a kid who'll show up every single day. He's got to do his job, be dependable. He'll get better as he goes, and he might hear 25 words over a 4 or 5 year playing career. But he's just a silent soldier that you're blessed to have. Now, he certainly is a communicator and a leader from a defensive standpoint, but he's just a quiet, goes about his business kid, and had a great junior year, and hopefully continues to play a high level. You got Lucas Cox, an outside linebacker, is a 3-year starter, really understands, and his growth IQ has been through the roof. I mean, he's making it hard on us offensively of just knowing what we're in, coverage. We get pretty familiar with ourselves, and so the defense is getting pretty good at disguising, and he's playing at a high level. New faces, coming in, backing up at outside linebacker for Lucas is Cooper Watson. He's been primarily an offensive guy, but he's a really good athlete, tough. He's just a kid he's going to be a really good player, and so finding a place to get him on the yard. Starting at inside alongside Joa, be Grant Allspaw, junior to be. He's one of those kids that was just a development JV guy, was all over kicking game. And, that's the first opportunity for guys to get on the field for us. And now here he is as a junior, and he's absolutely more than ready. He's up to 200 pounds, strong, good IQ, good kid, tough, and excited to see him compete. Boundary outside, replacing Finley. He's a steady leader and losing a lot there. He was a rock bowling ball weight room kid, and was a good player, had a great senior year. But starting, you'll see 2, Gage Parker, who we mentioned at running back. We'll play boundary outside linebacker, and then Carson Pierce, who's just continued to grow and develop, and went from just a kind of a kid who you knew would hit, but the football piece, was still a work in progress. Yeah. And now he's really getting it.
He played linebacker when you handed him the ball too a lot of times as well.
Yeah, no, he was going to go find the ball even if he was supposed to be doing something else, and so he's really understanding the game, and he still has that physical nature, and so he's a fun one to watch. And you'll see some young guys at inside, and Hayden Holt and Brody Eaton, sophomore linebackers to be, but you'll also see Griffin Parsons and Gage Parker dual training at some inside, just providing depth. And so we feel good about what we have from a backer standpoint.
Yeah, there's some guys we've already talked about are back there in the defensive backfield. Blaine Reagan, who is, you want him on the field as much as possible. I know he's been a shutdown corner, in my opinion, one of the best I see week in and week out in the state. Memphis Maddox got a lot of reps there, especially at the end of the season when Tyler Fischer went down. Brock Reagan, you mentioned a lot of other guys coming back with experience. You mentioned DJ probably playing a little bit both ways as well. So
yeah.
who all is going to make up that defensive backfield?
It's a strength. I feel like our defensive backfield is going to be incredibly athletic. A lot of experience, kids that can run, willing tacklers, and able to play the ball in the air, have good ball skills. But starting at corners, you mentioned Blaine Reagan. You got a 4-year starter, so he and Jalen both started as freshmen. He's got to be a 2-year, two-way starter. So he's a kid that he doesn't get tired. He's a energized bunny that just keeps going, and great player. But then you got Memphis Maddox that you mentioned, got some meaningful experience down the end of the season last year. I know he'll start for us opposite of Blaine. Kids that you'll see rotate, and we do rotate kids a lot. Lawson Brown will play some corner as well as safety. You're going to see DJ playing corner. You're going to see. I feel like I'm missing somebody. That makes me sad, but. We've got kids that are rotating in out there, do a great job at safeties. You're going to see Brock Reagan and Griffin Parsons. Griffin will take over for Aiden Sanders at the boundary safety, and Jory Toma will still play there as well, and he played quite a bit. We'll utilize him in our 3 high safety stuff, and then Lawson Brown will also play some safety, and he's a kid that we've talked. He's undersized, and I tell him, man, if I put you out there, you got to understand every coordinator and quarterback,
they're throwing it at you.
They're going to throw it at you.
Yeah.
And they call him the Slim Reaper because he just has a way of taking the ball away. And
he did, because he got stuck in a couple positions where I feel like Brock went down maybe a little bit early at time. I mean, he was out there. I think we talked about it before, against Edwardsville. He felt like going up against a couple of 6'5" freaks on the outside, and didn't matter.
No, but he's been a kid that he's earned it because he does it in practice. He does it against our receivers. They'll do it against Jory. He'll do it against Blaine. He's a tremendous competitor, mature beyond his years as a kid. And he's just a great kid to have on roster, and he's going to be a really good player.
Yeah. And then how important is that when it comes to the reps you guys get? I mean, you joked about it. You're like, am I looking at 2 really good units, or is one of these units what's are they 2 bad units? In my opinion, from watching on the outside, I think you got 2 pretty good groups here, offensive and defensively. I mean, they're seeing just about as good of a competition each day in practice as you can see going up against, like, if you're a Lawson Brown or somebody on defense. I mean, you've got to run with Blaine Reagan, like you said, the fastest kid on the field pretty much night in and night out, or Jory Toma, who's all-state. You're getting reps against kids that are all-state in 1 sport, 2 sports, things like that, and each day in practice.
Yeah, it is. It's been high competition by design. There's a competition for jobs. We've got a lot of talented kids, and kids want to play, and then it's our job of creating niches and roles for guys. Football is one of the only sports that you got 88 starting positions. So our goal is to play a lot of kids on game day. We want to be playing 50 and 60 kids on Fridays. And depth is important, and two-way guys are important. But you mentioned it. We want practice to be almost as stressful than games for our guys, and the growth that happens for young people. Because now you're getting into some of your 2s are playing against your one defense, and that next group of O-line, and what it's not always fun, but the growth that happens for those guys in that period of time, the confidence that occurs for these young receivers, learning how to get open and separate against these DBs, it just feeds in the development of the next kid up, and continues to add depth, and you'll have years where we're really talented and years that we're not quite as, but by and large, you're hoping that you're always going to be through that development process able to put a quality product out there.
Yeah, and then finally, special teams, I know you lose Holder and Nolan Bartles, but I think is the rest of the unit probably going to stay about the same on each group?
Yep. You got Grant Brown returning. We punted the first 2 weeks of the season. We did have an official punt to start in Edwardsville that was called back on a penalty, and then he took a break until the CBC game. So he's a kid that actually, he can really bang it. He punts the ball really well, and has good hang time and can really turn him over. He can also shank some too, so I'll say that and look right at the camera at him. But he's a good punter. You've got Gage Parker that'll handle the long snaps, and he does a good job of zipping it back there, and he's also a athletic kid that can run and tackle.
Yeah, it's a dangerous guy. With the head full of steam.
Absolutely. Yeah. And then you got Gavin Shen that'll handle the short snaps. He's very consistent there, and you got Griffin Parsons, Drew's little brother, that'll he'll handle the holding. PATs probably wouldn't, if we were starting right now, it'd still go Outman there, but Nolan Moore, Joe's little brother, continues to push. He's got a strong leg. Jack's been a little more consistent, I think, to this point, but it's the kicking battle has really been up in the air, but it's two good kids and good players that have strong legs, so it'll be good for the Indians however it shakes out.
And special teams, very important. You saw it week 1 last year, which is another circumstance. You're talking about competition and staying ready. Evan Turley, who we're not talking about kicking, he came in and kicked a game-winning field goal against the Cardinal Ritter team, who's one of the best in the state. And then, like you said, by season's end, you were working in Outman, Moore, all these other kids. That's a position where you've got to be ready to go.
Yep, and without hesitation, truly without hesitation in that moment, I didn't think twice about it. Big field goal, in the CBC game in a pressure situation. But that's something that, had been talked about with him in his ear in practice in stressful situations there of, it might have even been that exact team, that's a situation down 2 and pressure on. Yeah. So he'd lived that moment long before he got there. So, yep.
And then a lot of guys we already talked about, you're also blessed on the kick and punt return group there. I know Evan was back returning some punts. You've had, Blaine Reagan, Jalen, Memphis Maddox, guys who have housed a few this past year. You have a big group of athletes you can throw back there.
Yep, we got a lot of kids that can run, and so we'll see how that shakes out. Punt return will be pretty solidified with Turley. Kickoff return, I think outside of Memphis, will still be a little bit up in the air. Got guys that are battling for it, but kicking game will be huge, particularly for early season matchups. It's you often find teams that play better up there in the kicking game. Have better outcomes early in high school football. So always a big part of what we do, and we'll continue to try and work at it.
Yeah, and then, I alluded to it earlier. One thing that was different from first season to last season was kind of the looks you guys put out on offense. I feel like year 1, off the top of my head, it was a lot of 11 personnel, things like that, primarily shotgun. It's always fun, I'm sure, for people to watch football before the year 2000 when last season you line up under center. You've got, 6 offensive linemen. You got 2 tight ends out there. You guys really showed pretty much a look of just about everything outside of, going wing T out there this past year.
We've working at trying to evolve and grow. For me as a play caller, and winning games in different situations. You're going to have to play a variety of games. There's some matchups that, like a Cardinal Ritter, you're just banking on that defense and get me one more stop, and we'll try and manufacture 3 more points somewhere down the road, playing off of it. And then there's times where your defense is running out of juice at CBC, and you just need that offense to get it done. So football, it takes winning games in a multitude of environments and elements and matchups, and so we're fortunate right now with the kids that we have to be able to utilize a lot of different kids' strengths and play to their strengths and use them in different roles, and it's good for the offense and good for the kids.
Yep. And finally, one thing I should have asked you at the very beginning, I think, is just staff changes, things like that. I've seen online there's been a few different guys added here and there. What who all of you added, and what are they kind of contributing to your group?
Yeah, really excited. I think the biggest thing is adding a freshman staff. this year, fully staffed the freshmen. I don't think people realized last year we had 3 defensive coaches that coached our entire varsity and JV. So they're managing 86 kids with 3 guys. To have the level of success we had on defense with that was truly impressive. So been able to develop a full freshman staff and then fully staff our defense. And so the new faces you've got, freshman staff will be Colton Ketcherside, who's already on our staff, is taking over that job. And Chad Callis, Cooper's dad, is volunteering for us and helping us out at the freshman level. And then you got Daniel Dickerson, state champion running back, Randall McDowell, state champion linebacker. You got former alum that it just means more when you've played there that are getting started with the freshmen. And then Tristan Pulley and Kwaku at coming over helping with varsity corners and varsity outside linebackers to fully staff. Our defense side of the ball it's truly been a blessing. You can see it.
It's a good experience, like having a Coach Pulley there who's been a head coach and had some really important positions here down south.
Yep. No, we're looking for guys that have coached it at a high level and guys that have been head coaches that are we're not shy on anybody that we get. So blessed with his experience level. It's great to have another guy who's been a head coach and to visit with him, and especially right now, him being still relatively new of outside looking in, acting as a consultant, if you will, and he's getting a lot of my insecure questions of how we doing. So it's been good.
That's good. Yeah, it's always good to, like you said, flesh out a staff, and then having a full freshman staff. You're not going to see that many places.
Yep.
And then speaking, I guess, of that, kind of related, is we are having the sweatiest podcast of all time, but we're doing it in the old gym, place that's been around for a lot of years. That is kind of something this school prides itself on, is the tradition, and you see it. There's you mentioned you got state champs on your staff. You've got dads on your staff. You've got multi generations of players on this, and you see it every Friday night when you've got a home game. It's packed out. Doesn't matter who you're playing, what time, what the weather, anything like that. What is kind of from your perspective having that kind of fan support and that backing from a community?
Yeah, I've said this. Still feel like an outsider and a weight. I mean, it's a privilege to coach here. It's a privilege to be a head football coach at Jackson. But I'll say that what makes Jackson special is the people. It's not the buildings, and the buildings are cool. They're neat, man. They're neat. But it is and always will be the people. It's folks that they care. They care more than just football. It's a community. It's the school district as a whole. All our athletic programs, all our activities, they're all of equal importance in the value that they bring to a young person's life. And our community gets that, and they value young people. They value the next generation. And so it's been a super blessing to be a part of the Jackson community. But it is absolutely uncommon, and sometimes Jackson folks need to be reminded of that, of truly how special it is here. Because of the people.
It is cool, because I do the radio and I go to all the road games, and I mean, I'm there an hour or so early, and I'm behind a whole line of people wearing red and black, no matter where it's at. I'm sure it's going to be that way in Louisville. It was that way the last 3 years up in Edwardsville. These people will follow you wherever here, and they're very, very devoted.
No doubt. When we've got a game below freezing wind chills, 40-mile-an-hour winds, rain, 6.5 hours away over there in Kansas City, and you've got a whole full stadium, it's a strong following.
Is that the coldest game you've ever coached in for you?
I don't like.
I know you
cold.
don't feel it. Yeah,
I like to think that I'm a tough guy, but I don't sugarcoat it when it comes to cold. So that was I was the Michelin Man anyway. And that one. So
that was brutal. Okay, then finally, we just talked about it. Your program is far from needing a sales pitch at this point. But what are people going to see when they show up here at the pit Friday? What kind of product are your kids going to put on the field, and what kind of standard are you guys going to hold them to?
I mean, I think the biggest thing is what we talk about, things that we can control, which is a group that's going to play incredibly hard, and a group that's going to have a tremendous level of passion and energy and joy and getting to compete. They'll be good. They'll be bad. The outcomes are going to be the outcomes, and we'll learn either way through those. But it's the things that we can control is showing up every day and working to the best of our ability and doing it with tremendous joy and passion.
Yes, sir. Well, Coach, thank you for your time. Thank you for sweating it out in here with me. It was a fun experience.
No doubt. Losing weight as I'm talking to
Yeah,
you,
this is
so
good. We're losing
appreciate it.
calories talking to you guys. But so thank y'all for watching. Once again, thank you to Coach Nesbitt. I'm sure I don't have to convince too many people, but get out here Friday nights. We got the 28th, Edwardsville, week 1 at home. Should be a fun one.
Absolutely. Go Indians.